mute and off camera. So with this,
Okay,
I ask Bibin to take over.
Larissa, you also have to hit the record button. I'm making you host again, please, so that you have the recording.
So I start the recording now, and Bibin can take over.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, recording has started. So, yeah, good afternoon and welcome everyone to this month's session. And yeah, thank you for joining. So for today, we have an interesting session. We have Tobias here as the speaker. The topic is welcome to the jungle, navigating security topics in the hybrid landscape. So we will be starting today's session with our main topic, and then we will move on to the Q&A. So during the session, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat, or as Tobias prefers, if you really want, if there is something, you can also unmute yourself. Tobias will try to take the questions in between, but if we have time crunch, then probably we will move the Q&A to the end. And yeah, once the Q&A is over, we will also quickly have a 5-minute session where we will quickly go through the critical security notes, which were released as part of February patch day. So we will take probably 5 minutes to quickly go through that. And yeah, that will be today's agenda. So yeah, then I welcome Tobias. So Tobias has been with SAP for more than 10 years, concentrating on technical security topics. His area of expertise includes encryption, authentication, infrastructure security, general information security topics, etc. So yeah, thank you, Tobias, for joining, and yeah, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Bibin, for the introduction, and welcome everyone to this session. I'm working in the area of security consulting, so I'm dealing a lot with this topic, not only from an implementation perspective, but also from the whole topic of wow, what's all the stuff that's coming around, and sometimes it feels like a jungle. And my hope for this session today is that after this session, you have a little of an insight into, okay, how can I cope with all the crazy stuff that's going on when the next log4j hits or stuff like that? How can I deal with all the craze that sometimes surrounds security issues, security topics? How can I approach security topics proactively and not only react to the next big thing that's coming in through the media or through some notes? And also, how can I maybe talk with people who are not that deep, not that focused on security, but rather maybe in some different roles? Because let's face it, if you're dealing with security and this topic is dear to your heart, then there are some obvious routes to take, and we're going to talk about that in a few seconds. But there seems to be other people around who are not so focused on security. I know that is surprising to me as well, but in the end, this was always quite interesting. And my hopes is that we as a security community get better at also communicating with people who are not that close to the topics that are so dear to our own hearts. And so that's the goal for the session. And let's just dive in. I'm hoping that we have a little, like, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Afterwards, handing over to Bibin for the security notes topics. Well, let's see what we end up with. The little disclaimer slide. Okay. The topic of security. I don't know what you think about when we're talking about security in general. I don't know if you think about, yeah, there's this secure operations map that SAP always proposes with all these different topics that come in from an organizational perspective, from process, from application, from system and environment perspective, the different topics that come in. And then you think about this, and then you open up the security baseline concept that is available. and you start reading the table of contents with all the different topics that are there. And then you scroll a little bit further and you see that there's a second page of contents, and then there's a third and a fourth, and there are more and more topics just in the table of contents. And then you see, okay, this document has like, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 pages. And each little paragraph is about, hey, this is something that you should do. This is something that is really important and stuff like that. And this is just concerning the systems that we have in our own hands. So these are usually the on-premise systems, but suddenly someone comes around and says, hey, yeah, there's this whole new world. There's this whole cloud world. And now you have to deal with that one as well. And but how are these interacting? And you're suddenly in hybrid scenarios where the cloud world is interacting with your on-premise world. And oh yeah, and then there's stuff like, I don't know, this is just a screenshot regarding Log4j. I just searched the security notes for Log4j, 366 documents found. And at some point it just feels like, okay, this topic is going to bring me to my knees. This is just so overwhelming. This is so much. How can we navigate this jungle that is thrown at us, that we come into, maybe with more pre-knowledge, maybe with less? And from my experience, this is also a topic that I always say security is a topic that keeps you humbled, because whenever you see a topic that you really understand, another topic comes around and you look at this and you say, okay, I have no idea what that's all about. And you immediately notice how much you don't know. So how do we navigate all of this? How do we navigate the complexity of hybrid scenarios, the complexity of security topics? Because when I think about it, in the end, a lot of these topics that we see on the secure operations map, like organizational and process stuff, this concerns cloud solutions as well as on-premise solutions, and the whole topic about, I don't know, let's say user management. This is something that also concerns the cloud world as well. And those topics that we have in our on-prem world, the same that we also have in the cloud world, in our hybrid scenarios, that should be solved there as well. And the first thing that we really need to understand when we're talking about hybrid scenarios, and especially about the cloud part of our hybrid scenarios, is that we have to have a shift of our understanding of how we are interacting, how we are dealing with these types of products. And the biggest thing, or the way that I like to describe is that we have a shift between trust and responsibility. So in your on-premise world, you could do basically everything. So if a Linux system needed to be patched, you had it in your own hand to, I don't know, mount the different repositories and patch your Linux system. On the other hand, it was your responsibility as well. So if you had an ABAP stack there, NetWeaveR's ABAP, you needed to patch it. You needed to implement the security nodes. In the cloud world, this works somewhat differently, because you're handing out responsibility. You're giving responsibility away to your cloud provider. So you have, but when you hand this out, you have to someone. You cannot just say, okay, here you have it, do whatever you like, but you have to replace it for yourself with something else. And this is basically trust. So the shift from the on-prem world into using cloud products as well is not just a shift of, yeah, I'm doing less work, I'm not doing this stuff anymore, and I'm doing it somewhere else, but rather it really is a shift of mindset that says, hey, in the olden world, you had the responsibility for all of this, and you could see and you could understand what's happening there. In the cloud world, to some extent, you have to trust your provider. For example, SAP, when you're consuming any of our cloud solutions, you have to trust them. And yes, this has to be trust has to be established, and you have to talk to us about, hey, what are you doing security-wise? Are you implementing the security nodes? Are you patching your operating systems? Do you have some some checks on that, and we are audited regularly regarding this. This is part of legal documents and stuff like that. But in the end, when we're coming from a technical perspective, as I'm coming from the area of basically basis administration, and then someone threw some certificates at me and said, "Hey, please sit next to this guy. He needs 800 certificates. Help him." And we looked at each other and had no clue what certificates were. So that's how I started in security, and now I'm doing this more or less full time. So when we're coming from this technical perspective, this whole cloud world sometimes seems a little bit strange to us. And this is the first thing that we really need to understand when we're talking about hybrid scenarios. If we're talking about the cloud part of a hybrid scenario, okay, what is our role in this whole environment? What is the stuff that we can still configure? What is the stuff that we still need to set up? What is the stuff that we need to trigger, maybe? So sometimes you have to trigger, please implement this node, please attach this SAML identity provider, please do this and this. But we also have to understand where our role is limited, and we say, yeah, we have to trust that you keep the operating system patched and up to date, stuff like that. And so this is really one of the central components, the first things that we need to understand. Okay, what is our role? What is our capabilities? What can we do, and how should we do it? And then the next thing that I want to talk about for just a few minutes is something that we do for quite a few years now, and that helps us a little bit to get a bigger picture. Because let's face it, I've seen this last year in December with Log4j. Basically, when Log4j hit, I think it was a Friday afternoon or so, and then on Monday, I just couldn't pick up the phone without someone talking about Log4j. Even meetings that I had set up with customers that were dealing with a completely different topic, they were all dealing with Log4j now. And how are you handling Log4j? Have you looked at this regarding Log4j? Log4j. And it was really reactive at some point. Oh, have we checked all our solutions? Stuff like that. But this is not usually what we want to do. But we don't want to only react to stuff, but we want to be proactive. And to be proactive, what we have to have is we have to have some sort of bigger picture, some overview, somewhere where we can start, because we cannot just start hacking away at all the little things and this, but we have to understand what are the big things and what are the little things. And one of the things that helps in this capacity is something called threat modeling. And this is really extremely helpful. And we started doing this ourselves. Threat modeling, basically, it is a systematic approach, which is always helping because you have some sort of framework that tells you, okay, do this and this and this, and then you have some sort of outcome. And what it helps you is to perform some sort of risk assessment and to uncover security threats, in our case at design time, because we're using this a lot in our development process. But also there's something that can help you just from a pure mindset on how to approach things. And threat modeling basically falls into three steps. First step is always to understand something, because you can only secure stuff that you really understand. If you don't understand it, you can click through some guides and stuff like that, but in the long run, this won't help you. But rather, you have to understand what is the scenario that I'm dealing with, what is the topic that I'm dealing with, what is happening here. Then when we understand what's going on, then we analyze it and we think about, okay, how can we, basically this is the part that's really fun. If you have to some extent this little child in your heart that really wants to destroy things, then the analyzed part is really the fun part, because that's the part where you go, okay, I have this whole scenario, I have my hybrid landscape with this cloud solution here and the cloud connector and my on-premise world here. And then you just think about, okay, if I was an attacker, where would I start? What could go wrong here? What could happen here? And this is the part where you analyze it, and then you decide what to do. Okay, let's go quickly through this. How can we understand things? Understanding, sometimes it just helps you to draw a picture. This can be drawing up a solution architecture, drawing up a some diagrams. There's one thing that we oftentimes use is we have some conventions. So these types are these boxes are agents. So this is stuff that does something, either a human or some system. There can be some storage. This is some things where you have stuff. Then you have channels and accesses. So there are requests coming in for stuff. There's something is put there, something comes back. You have entry points into different agents. You have maybe entry points into storage, and you have some sort of trust boundaries. So you say, okay, this is in a trusted environment, or this is the person sitting in the internet trying to access the Fiori launchpad, stuff like that. And you just draw it up. And I would really encourage you, to some extent, to really draw it up yourself. I'm coming from with a background in mathematics, and the interesting thing about studying mathematics, even if it's more than 10 years ago, was everything was happening with chalk on a board. And at first we were all sitting there like, yeah, why would you use chalk? Nowadays we have PowerPoint and we have smart boards and all this kind of stuff. But after some while, I realized the value that there is in really seeing something developing and seeing something, okay, this is coming in, this element is coming in, this has to be considered in this in this flow and stuff like that. So really drawing up your scenario. Hey, I have this cloud solution here, I have this cloud solution here. This is talking to this. This is and really drawing it up. This is something that really helps you internalize and understand what is the scenario. What are we dealing here? What is our landscape? And then you can start with the fun part. So apart from just looking into guides, into security guides for the different products, into something like a security baseline concept, maybe start looking into the security notes and seeing, okay, these are the things that really need to be secured, which is really helpful. So don't get me wrong, this is really helpful to understand what there is. And oftentimes, especially if you have overview things like a security baseline concept, this already gives you some sort of, hey, this is a critical thing. This might be an optional thing. This has a higher priority. This has a lower priority. But apart from that, it's also really helpful to just look at it and say, okay, how is this relevant for our own systems? How is this relevant in our own environment? Just to give you a quick example, I have a customer who is really not that concerned about remote code execution. Whenever you run into remote code execution, especially unauthorized or unauthenticated remote code execution, this is always basically it's a guaranteed CVS score of 10. This is really highly critical. But this customer is not concerned about that at all. Why? Well, the systems are really, really isolated. So to reach these systems are not connected to the internet in the sense that they are not connected to the internet. If they want to update their system or put in patches, for them usually it's easier to just take a USB flash drive over to Waldorf, get the files there, drive back and plug it in. This is easier for them than just downloading the files. So there's a really highly isolated area. So if we're talking about remote code execution, especially unauthenticated remote code execution, they're not that concerned about it, because until you reach the systems, you have to be authenticated at some point. You have to be on premise. You have to be running through their entry checks and all this kind of stuff. And so for them, a remote code execution is something completely different than for some system that's freely accessible via the internet, for example. And so sometimes this might give you an idea that sometimes different risks have to be validated and evaluated differently in different scenarios. And when we analyze such a scenario that we have here, analyze something that we now did understand, something that helped me think about this is a classification that's I think it's from the 90s or so, which is called Stride. I think this was first introduced by Microsoft or so. This is not a classification in a sense that it helps you identify all the problems that might occur, but it's just a mnemonic device that helps you think about different classes of security errors that might occur, and especially to help you understand, hey, this and this might occur. This and this might be a threat that you should also think about. This is something also to be considered. It does not mean that if you run into something and you say, okay, I could attack it this way, but does it fit the Stride classification? Yeah, if it doesn't, it doesn't matter. If it's a security threat, then you have to think about it and deal with it. But this helps you to not forget some very important classes. And for me, it was sometimes when I looked at this the first time, it was like, oh yeah, this is also something that we need to consider. And so we're going to go through this. As I said, this is a mnemonic device. Every letter of this name stands for one of the different threats that might occur. So we're going to go through this and yeah, just have a little bit of fun. Okay, S. The S. Well, don't believe everything you read on the internet, which is a classic spoofing. I don't know. I think it is one of the hardest time over the last few years to really, if you read any quote, to really know if this is really by the person that is right below this. In Germany, someone even created a game out of this, which is basically you have cards of persons or of people, and then you have some different quotes, and you have to match them up so that the most funny matchup wins. So this is really a game nowadays. But spoofing basically means attributing some action, some event, something to the wrong to the wrong person, to the wrong actor. This could mean something like me coming in and saying to some system, hey, I'm an administrator, and oh yeah, there's people really dealing with this full time, with this investigating of wrong quotes. Yeah, absolutely. So you got a good link in the chat here. But spoofing would be me going to a system saying, "Hey, I'm an administrator," even though I'm maybe just a simple user. So spoofing my identity, spoofing, "Hey, this call is coming from someone else." And if we're looking at last week's security notes, we see something like that. So the web dispatcher ICM security node that is there. This is exactly dealing with a spoofing attack where we have some request smuggling, and the system identifies the request as coming from someone else than from whom the request originally came. So spoofing, attributing a wrong actor to some event or action. Then we have this fun thing. For the non-German speakers, PC-Wahl 10, PC, personal computer. Yes, Wahl is the German word for election. And this thing here is the interface of an election software that at least was used in Germany a long time ago. And we have one unofficial one club over here in Germany, which is the Chaos Computer Club, and they started investigating this piece of software. And this software is not there to count the votes, but rather it is there to transfer the votes, or to centralize the votes after the voting. So you have the votes, and you collect them in different locations. And then these are sent out to one central location, and so you centralize the votes there, and then you count up the whole number. This product was used for that, and what they found out is that to some extent they were able to tamper with the results, which, when we're talking about elections, is not that reassuring. And so there was a whole discussion with the vendor of this software, and they told them, hey, this is how you can secure it. This is how you should encrypt stuff. This is how you can make communication secure, and all this kind of stuff, to just make sure that no tampering occurs, that no changing of stuff occurs where stuff shouldn't be changed, that where stuff shouldn't be made to behave in a way that it shouldn't behave in, where you say to things, hey, please do this and that. I have a colleague of mine who told me that they had some programming sessions, and there was one variable which had a specific length, and he just asked the programmer about, hey, but what happens if I'm putting in a string that is longer? What happens with the overrun? So classical buffer overflow. I was like, yeah, but you shouldn't. Yeah, but what if I do? Yeah, but that shouldn't happen. Yeah, and we have to make sure that this really does not happen. And even if someone tries to tamper with stuff, that it doesn't behave in undefined ways, but rather that exceptions are thrown. We're coming to the R. This is a man that I learned about, I think, it's like 4 years ago. This guy is Pete Hoekstra, and there's a quite nice video of him stating, I didn't say that. So basically a repudiation, stating that you didn't do something. The funny thing about this is, if you ever want to have fun, just Google this or just search this on YouTube. And this is the envoy to the Netherlands. And he was confronted in an interview on public television there, and he was asked about some stuff that he said about there being no go zones in the Netherlands, and there being politicians being set on fire and stuff like that. And he was asked about this on public television and said, no, I never said anything like that. And afterwards, they showed him a clip of him being at some conference and stating exactly those things. And it was like he was on a panel, and it was this little cardboard paper in front of him stating his name. So it was him. And so they confronted him, and they showed him the clip and said, okay, now what's your answer about that? You just said that you didn't say this. It was like, I never said that I didn't say this. So it was really puzzling for me to view this video of someone really stating something that was available on camera, that was available on tape. I said, okay, is this really happening right now? So repudiation, stating that it wasn't you that was doing something. I had a colleague, and we were there, and it was about certificates being changed in the system. And it was not even us accusing them of anything. It was just, okay, we had a problem with the certificates, and we just came to them saying, hey, we saw that you were the last person to change anything there. Could you tell us what you changed so that we can see if this might have led to the problems that we have at the moment? No, I never touched this. I never changed anything there. And so we showed him the logs stating, hey, you were the last person to actually change anything and just modify this piece of information. And so afterwards we figured out, and it wasn't even their fault. It was not something that they did, but this whole thing about repudiation, can someone deny anything that was happening there? Especially if you're thinking, for example, about compliance and seeing who changed, for example, some parameters in the system. This is something that might hit closer to home, something that we are more familiar with. This is a really nice Twitter account. I think it's closed nowadays, but a few years back they provided pictures like this. Yay! I got a new card, and it's so amazing. And then some photos of this card, and these people always were surprised that at some point someone else purchased stuff with their cards. And so this is a classical case of information disclosure. Information where information that usually should be hidden, that should be kept secret, is exposed. And this is basically the stuff that we run into when we talk about, for example, about these whole user and password databases, stuff like have I been pwned, where information that should be in the system and should not be disclosed somehow is disclosed. This can be either technical information, host names, patch levels, stuff like that, but also business information that is disclosed at some endpoint. I have a colleague who was looking at a page. He was thinking about buying a new car, and the trouble he had was he wanted to look up the different dealerships, but he just could only filter for a very specific region, but he wanted to have a larger list. And so he looked at the requests and saw that the request in itself had this filter option in it, and he just removed the filter option and sent out the request, and he got back a list not only of all the dealers of that company, of that brand, but rather he got back some information about what's the status of the dealer, what's the endpoint for their invoices, what's their relationship with the brand and stuff like that. So a lot of information that was exposed, going way beyond just giving him the address and telephone numbers and opening times, where information was disclosed just by disclosing it via some endpoint there. Last but not least, oh no, we are still 2 away. D, as in denial of service. I actually had this situation a few years back. My car, actually, I ended up, I thought I could reach the next gas station. Unfortunately, I didn't, and so I had to be picked up with a little can of gas and go forward. Denial of service, stuff not working in a way, or not being accessible and not being available in a way that it is expected to be available. The classical case here would be a distributed denial of service attacks, the stuff that we saw a few years back with the Mirai botnets firing a few terabytes of data within a few seconds at servers, and then servers crashing and not being able to respond to any valid requests because there were so many invalid requests. Is there any way of having something go down, of having some congestion within an infrastructure, within a system setting, so that valid requests or valid communication or valid stuff cannot happen anymore? Denial of service. And then at last we have the E, as in elevation of privileges. This is a webcomic. If you don't know XKCD, go there. It's really fun. Make me a sandwich, make it yourself, sudo make me a sandwich. Okay, if you run it, if you ever print this on a t-shirt and you see someone smiling, it's always a nice person to talk to. This is a standard Linux way of elevating privileges. Sudo is an elevation of privileges under Linux and the command line. But can someone who is in a system who is there, can they do stuff that they are not allowed to? This is usually the topic of authorizations. I've been in contact with a customer over last year, and we were dealing with the technical stuff like setting up single sign-on, setting up certificates, stuff like that. But the person I was in contact with there also told me that they were also cleaning up the authorizations, because what they did there was basically copy over the sub all authorization into a new role and assigning that one to all the users. They never had any messages regarding missing authorizations from their users or so, because basically they gave all the authorization to everyone, which would be too many privileges. Can someone get these privileges even if they are not supposed to? Do we have a process for assigning authorizations that really makes sure that no one just can say, yeah, please give me the authorization, and this is automatically acknowledged? So elevation of privileges, are there endpoints where someone can do more than they're supposed to? So when we think about all these different categories in our scenario, then the last thing that we need to do is to decide. And this is one that was for me a little bit strange at first, because whenever I looked at all these different things, and when I started to look at the scenario, and then I analyzed it, and then I found something, and then I saw, okay, when I look at all the different things that can go wrong here, then I see the things that are most important and the things that are less important, and I have this overview. Basically, this gave me a to-do list. These are all the things that need to be fixed. And at some point, I realized that this is not always the case. So yes, mitigating a risk, fixing a risk is one of the possibilities, but there's also the option to actually accept a risk, to say, okay, yeah, this is a risk, and we see that this might happen, but this is the chances of this happening are so low, or the impact of this is so low, that and the mitigation is so hard and so much work, that it is more feasible to actually accept a risk than to mitigate a risk. And this is basically the part that is really, really crucial for us, especially if we're talking about people that are maybe not that close or that deep involved in the security topic. Because let's face it, usually when you're a security administrator somewhere, you're usually not the one deciding how to spend the security money or how much money to spend on security. In the end, this decision is made by someone else. And the things that we can do is really make this decision, this part about should we mitigate or should we accept the risk. Our goal should be to make this as transparent and as understandable as possible. So going through all these, understanding the scenario, analyzing it, unearthing all the different security topics, security problems that might arise, the thing that should happen after that is we should basically have some sort of, hey, this is the risk associated with it. If we don't do it, this is what it would take to actually get rid of this problem. And then make this, and then have someone say, hey, okay, this is the decision that you have to take, either to go mitigating or to accept the risk. There is one thing that I see over and over and over again. And this is something where people don't want to actually make a decision here. And that's why I think this is really the crucial part for any setup, for any scenario. I always tell my customers there are two valid reactions to security risks or to security topics. One is mitigation, and one is risk acceptance. There's a third option, and this is not a valid response to security issues, and this is putting your head into the sand. And this is what I see over and over, because the understanding and the analysis is not there, and the decision is not made clear. Then people usually try to just avoid the security topic, get away from it, and just say, "Oh yeah, well, security is very, very important to us," and just leave it at that. And it's so unclear, and it's just a little bit fuzzy, and you can wiggle your way around this. And maybe you even have. I had at my very first project, I had a change request that was coming in, which basically just stated, "Make everything secure." And we were really discussing, should we close it immediately because it's just not just so unclear, or should we keep it open forever? So those were basically the two options: make everything secure. But our role as security people should be to really make the decision, to really make this decision that needs to be taken, to make it really clear to the person who is actually responsible to make this decision. And if it's not their part, and if they don't want to take the decision, then they need to escalate this. Then they need to go to their manager, to the next level, and say, hey, there's a decision that needs to be taken here. our goal and our task is to make this decision really transparent to the person who's responsible for this. Okay, so in the end, these are the things, these are the steps that we need to take. Understanding what our scenario is, especially in a hybrid landscape. This is really something that's crucial. That's getting more complex with all the different systems that are involved. Then analyzing where are there security issues that arise, where are things that come in, and then make sure that the people responsible for a decision have this decision as transparent as possible, so that they can make an informed decision to either say, yeah, we need to mitigate this, we need to take the resources and mitigate this this topic, or accept the risk and say, really, yes, we are accepting this risk, and really make the decision and not keeping their head stuck in the sand. Okay, this is it in general from my side. I think we have a few minutes for questions and answers. If you have any questions, just feel free to put them into the chat, or also you can also unmute yourself. Then people have the chance to hear a different voice than just my voice all the time. Maybe get a little bit of different some different voices in there as well. The recording is also stopped, as I've heard, so you can talk freely now. So your voice won't be recorded. So if there are any questions, just feel free to type them into the chat, unmute yourself.
All right, thank you, Tobias, for your presentation. Now to the audience, you can also indicate if you would like to speak up, so we can then manage you. The materials of today's session, the presentation and the PDF will be available. I will also repost the link in the chat. So for those who would like to use these materials for further studies. And if there are no questions, I would probably ask Bibin to take over for the next steps and for the information that he would like to share.
Sure. Thanks, Larissa. Thanks, Tobias. And just sharing my screen. Maybe someone can confirm. Is it visible?
Yes, Vipin, can see.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Mukesh. Yeah, so hi everyone, and yeah, it was a really interesting session. So I just want to quickly take up 5 minutes to go through the critical security notes which got released as part of this month's patch day. I'm just sharing this link into the chat. So as you can find here, we have the security patch day block here, which lists all the security nodes which got released from January patch day, after January patch day and till February patch day. So you can find the entire list here. I'll be using a presentation or a PPT for my presentation here. This is just for easy presentation. This not be shared. All the information which is available in these slides is already available in the wiki page which I just shared. So yeah, so getting into the critical SAP security nodes which got released in February, we have mainly 3 security nodes. The first one is the Log4j issue related security nodes. So we do have individual security nodes released for this particular Log4j issue. I think, yeah, Tobias also covered the importance on the criticality of this Log4j issue. Then we have 2 more issues, 2 more security nodes, one released for the NetWeaver area and the other for the Solman area. Yeah, and as always, we always advise our customers to implement these security nodes at the earliest, just so that you are always protected against the potential exploits and to make sure that your system is secure. And as Tobias rightly put, don't ever let your don't keep your head stuck into the sand. Always make a informed decision, and this is very much important. So then, getting into the details of these security nodes, the first one. Sorry. Yeah, the first one we have here is the Log4j related issue. As you know, this is a remote code execution. We have multiple products which are affected and individual security nodes released for each of the affected products. I am not going to go through each of the individual security nodes. I have just mentioned the central security node. This will have a list of all the security nodes which we have released for the Log4j, this particular CVE, the 442281, the first one with a 10.0 CVSS score. So as you know, this particular vulnerability has a complete compromise of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, all three vectors. So please prioritize it and look into the security node for individual products related corrections. Yeah, then we have another security node which was released for SAP NetWeaver and also affecting SAP Content Server and SAP Web Dispatcher. Here also the CVSS is 10.0, the maximum, with complete compromise of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And this also is kind of gaining attention outside as far as what we can see from the media articles. So please do prioritize this along with the Log4j case. Finally, we have one more, which is for the solution manager. Here, the impact is, although the impact is also complete compromise of confidential integrity and availability. Here, we need to have privileges required to be high. That means only an admin or a high privileged user can exploit this. But as you know, the impact is already for all the three vectors, and this is also should be something which you should be prioritizing from your side. So these are the important security nodes which we had for February patch day. You can reach out to me in this email address also if you have any further questions or if you have any questions regarding any other security nodes also. So that's all from my side. Really thank you to everyone for joining. And thank you, Tobias, for also the wonderful presentation. If you prefer to have any sessions presented in this forum, please let me know also. And I would now hand over to Larissa. If there are any questions, you can still raise it now. But otherwise, I would like to hand it over to Larissa for the closing note, and probably can just update about the next session.
So Bibin,
I think there's one question from Mark Kühnert I've seen regarding best practices, how you can manage your landscape with supporting tools like Solman or ALM. Well, the topic is always this topic of monitoring stuff. The question is always, or when we're talking about monitoring and how can we get the insight there, the biggest topic there is usually the question of you have to be sure what do you want to see, or at least what is of importance for you, what should you react to. So yes, there is some visibility in different tools regarding Solution Manager, ALM, some dashboards for cloud solutions. But in the end, the thing that's usually helpful is apart from looking into what's available there, yes, is also checking, okay, what are the things that I would like to see and how can I get them? How can I get this in any capacity? How can I get, I don't know, the failed logon attempts? And then seeing how can I collect this, and how can I collect this into a central system? Are there any connectors for this in, I don't know, Solution Manager, in Focused Run, in my current monitoring solution, in my ZM solution? Do I need to have some sort of ETD involvement here that's propagating the stuff into my ZM solution? The thing is, are there any best practices? I don't know. The solutions for this are basically, if I have 10 customers, they probably have 12 to 15 solutions for this. What I see over and over is there are many things that are really helpful, especially if we're talking about something like a security optimization service, a security nodes overview for your landscape, dashboards depending on your cloud solution. But in the end, it all boils down to, okay, what's the tool that you would look at, and how can you get the stuff that's really helpful to you in there? It's similar with monitoring. I always say, okay, if you buy a monitoring tool, there are two ways that monitoring tools are usually configured. Either they are always red or they are always green. What you need to do is basically figure out what's helpful to you, what are the things that you need to see. So best practices. There's one practice that I really consider really substantial for the whole topic, and this is having some sort of, let's call it security baseline, or general security architecture, security policy, whatever you might call it. Because if you want to check anything, you usually have to determine what is normal and what is a deviation from normal. And to some extent, you have to define what is normal in our landscape. And then you have to check, okay, then the next step is, okay, how can I check deviations from that? I hope this was a little bit helpful. Perfect. Glad to hear that.
I think there is a question. Okay, what is your recommendation? Yeah. So personally, I am not from the development team here for this, and I would not prefer, like I cannot answer here. But what I can recommend is kindly create a customer incident on the application component for that security node, and you will get your response there. Or if you want to reach out to by email, also you can reach out to me by email, and I can reach out to the respective team and get the right response.
Regarding this additional connection, so the whole ICM web dispatcher topic here, the absolute recommendation here is to patch the ICMs and the web dispatchers, so get to the newer kernel versions, but also look into which systems are actually vulnerable at which points. So, for example, the HANA stacks, the XS Classic as well as the XSA, they are not vulnerable, so you don't have to take any action there. The web dispatcher as well as the ABAP stacks, they have fixes already. For the Java stack, at least the last note that I saw was that I think this parameter might lead to some congestion, some performance problems within the systems, because first of all, you have a lot of additional connections that need to be re-established, and then it depends a little bit on how fast the high ports that are used for outgoing connection, how fast they are made free again, and so you might run into restrictions or into problems with not enough high ports being available for outgoing connections as well. So in the Java world, I know the last thing I checked in the node was that it said, please be careful about this, and the usual way to do this is to, I think, to not set this parameter, but to implement a different workaround at the moment. And I think the patch for the Java systems should be, or is announced to be available not that far away. But this is the last thing I remember, just from memory. I might be completely wrong here, but this is, basically it is more or less, be careful with Java systems, but NetWeaver ABAP and web dispatchers can be patched. Joe is already one step ahead. So there is also a Java patch. So please patch your systems.
Yeah, Tobias, thanks for the response, as well as Joe for referring me to the wiki page. And we do also get some latest patches from the developers that fixes the performance issue or the port exhaustion issue, right? So I think if this has been patched or this has been corrected with the latest patches, then I don't think we have to fear about this performance issue, and we can go ahead with the workaround of web dispatcher patching, right? Because why I'm asking this question is, I am from ECS responsible for the security of application is Java as well as ABAP, as far as our private cloud business is concerned. And we have almost like 2,000 plus customers in our business, and we can't afford to go with kind of patching the backend system, taking the runtime, and it's very tedious job. So that's why we are looking at the strategy of patching the web dispatchers. And the only hindrance what we are facing is that we don't have any idea about this particular parameter and we learned from the notes that there are some performance issue, particularly with relevant to AS Java. But with this latest patches, are we all good? Is my question. Yeah. So if that's the case, then we will go ahead with setting this. We will go ahead with the fixing the web dispatcher kernels plus setting this parameter. But later, do we have to remove it? Is also my question. Yeah. So we have like in a situation kind of
So in the long run, yes, I would remove this parameter again. Just because, well, it is always closing. I think, or I think to some extent this might even be what the web dispatcher does automatically. But well, this parameter is one that is there to fix something as a workaround, as I understand it. And I would try to keep workaround parameters out of my systems as far as possible. So yeah, there's nothing as stable as a temporary solution. But I would try to. I'm more of a minimalist in that capacity to really only set those parameters that are really neat in the system, and so I would remove it in the long run again. But that's just my conceptualization of system parameterization.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Tobias. Yeah.
So we are almost on the top of the hour, and the last chance to state your question. I've also seen in the chat from Mark, my dream is to have a deep view in SAP ALM as the solution managers run out of maintenance. And we will set up SAP ALM, so I can take this suggestion and put it into the pipeline for our webcast series, because this is also something that we would like to hear from our participants. If you have any wishes, requests for additional topics, we are really glad to to consider them for our further sessions, and would be great to stay with you, to stay in touch with you, and with our sessions provide more value for your work. So there is some more comment from Joe. I keep it open for those. Yeah, I think it's kind of best practice probably to share with others. And of course of a value for the participants. So if there are no more questions, again, thank you very much, Tobias. Thank you, Bibin, for providing all the information today. As I've already indicated, our SAP Security webcast series will continue. Currently, we have our monthly cadence. The next session will take place on 18th of March. I've already indicated the topic for the next session in the chat. The topic will be decrease the risk from insider data threats and take protection of your crown jewel data assets to the next level. Yes, I will, of course, promote this session on LinkedIn, and this session will be also announced and yeah, on the web presence of our SAP Security webcast series. With this, thank you very much. Thank you for everybody who have participated today. It was great session, and I hope you enjoy your day, afternoon, morning, wherever you are. And we look forward to welcome you in our next session in March. Thank you very much, and bye-bye. I will keep the session open for a few more minutes for those who would like to leverage the information out of the chat. Yes, and we'll close the session a bit later.